A good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to our Brain Talk Show. This happens every Friday at 7 p.m. This is a My Tree initiative, and this is our second episode. We had the first episode last week, but one, where we introduced about environmental sustainability, the Sustainable Finance series. How are we combating the changes? My Tree initiative is an organization, a youth organization that has been dedicated to combat climate change, create awareness about deforestation, teach people, engage people into planting trees. Today, in our second episode, tonight, we want to dive into something really cool, the green bonds. You wonder, what is a green bond? What do you mean by a green bond? A green bond is like any other bond. When you hear about green bond, that means investment, finance, money. But this money is targeting the environment. It is targeting the sustainability. How can we make our planet get into the best position we need? In today's topic, we are going to analyze the effectiveness of green bonds in mobilizing capital for wildlife conservation initiatives. Green bonds and how they help save animals. Now, for the one listening, imagine it like this: money becoming a superhero for wildlife. Tonight, ex- we will look through how this clever money, the green bond, how what difference can it bring on this planet Earth, onto our amazing creatures, the animals everywhere, from jungles to open fields. Tonight, Stefan, watch. We are going to see how money can team up with nature. So get ready for this chat. This is your Green Talk Show. It is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists in today's discussion. We have Dr. Martin Bankundana, FCCA, the Executive Director of LEM Mindfulness, and is a lecturer at Macquarie University with a PhD in finance. Dr. Martin, we are happy to have you here. Second, we have Dr. Gladys Zikusoka, a CEO of Conservation Through Public Health, a conservationist. Doctor, we congratulate you being here. Please feel free to share with us. Yes, Dr. Martin. With the audience around us, can you share more with us about the LEM Mindfulness Organization, where you're the executive director? Yes, people would like to know, what is it about and what's its impact on the environmental sustainability?
Thank
Dr.
you.
Martin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edgar. First of all, it's my pleasure to join you once again this evening to discuss more about this initiative. As already introduced, my name is Martin Bankundana. I am a PhD finance graduate and an FCCA, having spent nearly the last 15 years practicing finance and accounting. Over the last 4 years, however, I have ventured into a new area, an area that many of you might be familiar with or might be affected by what is happening in that particular sector. And that sector is mental health.
Yes.
And therefore, I am here as the ED of an organization called LEM Mindfulness.
Yes.
And we are a mental
Okay.
wellness organization. And our main objective is to foster mindset change around especially young people, knowing that Uganda as a country has nearly 78% of its population being young people. And when you look at the trends, Africa is more or less the same. And we are projected as a continent to almost hit 4 billion in the next 100 years. And that is a big opportunity for us as a continent. Now, briefly about my organization and how we get into um, climate change. It might again be surprising that there is a relationship or there is a correlation between mental health and climate change.
Yes.
You might have heard of natural disasters that have happened in areas like Bududa, the landslides. You might, if you're living in Kampala, you might already be affected by the flooding around Kampala. Whenever it rains, there are people who get displaced by the floods. The question is, why is it that Kampala was not flooding a number of years ago? Why is it that Kampala is flooding now? It is partly because of some of the private practices of individuals in and around Kampala that destabilize the environment. And what happens then is that someone who lives in Waisi, for example, then gets displaced because it has been raining the whole night. They don't get to sleep. And if that happens consistently over time, then such a person gets to deal with the after effects. And that is how mental health comes in. If you're living in the Bududa area or the Chisoro area or the Kabale area and there is a landslide, maybe you might be unfortunate that you
Yes.
lose a family member, or you might be unfortunate that your entire village is wiped out and you're the only one who remains. So what happens to your mental health? So we are engaging on a project to understand the nature and extent of the relationship between mental health and climate change, and that is how we get to this space.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very great, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Gladys. Dr. Gladys, a CEO of Conservation through Public Health. We have heard of the Gorilla Conservation Coffee, and it seems to be a successful social enterprise and a financial platform. How is GCC supporting gorillas conservation in Uganda? We need to know about the GCC, the Gorilla Conservation
Thank you
Coffee.
so Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
Yes.
It's a great initiative. And I would say before I even start to talk about coffee, we founded, it's a social enterprise of conservation through public health. This is Gorilla
Yes.
Conservation Coffee. And we founded Gorilla Conservation Coffee based on the experiences I had working in Bwindi, Penetrable 7 years ago as the first veterinary officer for Uganda Wildlife Authority. And when people made gorillas sick, we realized that we couldn't keep the gorillas healthy without attending to the health of the human neighbors. So we started Zikusoka, and the vet technician, Stephen Rubanga. Oh, people can't hear me properly? Can you hear me properly?
Yes. Yes, Dr. Gladys, I think, has some network issues.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Doctor.
Hear me?
Hello, we can hear you right now. I think it's network. Hello. Okay. As Dr. Gladys comes on board, I'd love to hear from Dr. Martin.
Yes, Edgar. Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Martin. As I was explaining at the start, the green bond to a layman who's watching the program, to a layman. Yes. I look at the green bonds as a financial instrument for sourcing finance, but the finances are for the environmental sustainability. I wonder what have the financial institutions, let me say the banks in Uganda, the commercial banks in Uganda, what have they done? Are they into the green bonds? Who's issuing out these green bonds? How are they getting to the economy? Yes. And for our target, environmental sustainability, how are they going to be of use?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Edgar. Those are around 4 or 5 questions in one. So I hope I get to answer all of them. I want to start from this angle, just to clarify a few things. Green bond, yes, is a financial instrument, and it is similar to other bonds that have been issued. Talk about treasury bonds, talk about corporate bonds, talk about municipal bonds, which are essentially fixed income instruments that are used to raise funds for different purposes.
Yes.
And what makes the green bond different or unique is that the purpose for which the funds are raised is specific. And in this case, the purpose is to finance projects that are specifically focusing on environmental sustainability or environmental conservation. That's why they are called green bonds.
Yes.
Now, typically, bonds are issued by either governments, and those are called treasury bonds, or
Okay.
they are issued by corporations, and those are called corporate bonds. And therefore, for green bonds, they are also issued by either government, state agencies, or municipalities, or corporations, or a combination of all the above mentioned. And they are issued in a normal standard way. But like I said earlier, the purpose is to finance projects that are aimed at conserving the environment. And therefore, the significant difference between green bonds and other types of bonds is simply that investors of green bonds, or those who purchase these green bonds, are interested in environmental conservation and therefore putting their money for that specific purpose. Now, in as far as the practicality or the practical application of these green bonds is concerned, I will give you a few examples. One is from around 2008 to 2020, the World Bank alone has issued green
Yes.
bonds of about $14.4 billion worldwide. And some of that money that
Yes.
has been raised has been invested in, um, for example, generating power in a more efficient way by funding specific dams, let's say in India, which has contributed significantly to environmental conservation. And when you come down to Uganda, yes, a number of these financial institutions
Yes.
have actually contributed to the issuance of these green bonds, again, because it is part of their CSR and part of their ESG strategy, which is environmental, social, and governance strategy to be able to promote environmental sustainability. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, so in terms of scope, obviously this is a growing market, and if you look at the first green bond was issued almost more than 15 years ago, and the market for green bonds then was slightly above $1 million, but now we are talking about a market of in excess of 300 billion US dollars, which is quite significant, and we are seeing increasing interest and participation, largely from China, but also from the US and some of the other European countries. And we are also beginning to see interest in some African markets, particularly South Africa and Nigeria, in promoting these green bonds or green financing. And also, the African Development Bank is coming up with a number of these initiatives to support these green bonds or the green financing project. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Then I would love to know, how are these financial institutions in Uganda? Have you heard of any trying to come into the green bond issuing, the green bond trading? Yes, we have heard of the corporate social responsibility, the ESG, the environmental responsibility banks are engaging into, but we haven't seen that great participation into them issuing out the green bonds to finance environmental conservation practices like the My Tree initiative. Yet we need finances.
Yes.
Highlight us more on that.
Yes. Thank you, Edgar. And just to continue from my last submission, uh, the market for green financing or green bonds in Uganda is a very, very young market, right? And so we are beginning to see the market appreciating the importance of having environmentally sustainable investment practices. And so, in terms of, if you look at the bigger investment climate, you realize that in Uganda, for example, from the wider capital markets perspective, we only have 19 listed companies on the Uganda Securities Exchange. And we have a very few bonds that have been issued on the market, generic bonds, especially corporate bonds. On the other hand, we see the government coming through on a number of occasions to raise or to issue treasury bonds for purposes of raising funds to finance different recurrent and 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 uh, and um, the development expenditure of the country. But when you look at the initiative towards green financing, it is still, at its infancy, largely because we still have a long way to go as a country. But as I said, there are steps that have been taken across the African continent in countries like South Africa, in countries like Nigeria, where there is some considerable progress that has been made. And
Okay.
I believe in Uganda, we are also beginning to see wider appreciation of the need to have these green bonds and green financing in general to take root. And so, for me, my my appreciation of the efforts is towards
Yes.
us acknowledging that there is need to actually take this approach, take this road.
Okay.
That let's focus on environmental sustainability, and let's make our investment decisions having environmental conservation in mind. And with time, we are going to get there. Maybe we'll see the first green bond being issued in Uganda in not so distant future, and we'll see how the market responds to that.
Okay. That's very interesting. One thing I've discovered is that we need to prepare our mindset to this green bond. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Yes, Dr. Gladys, I want to hear from you. Yes, Dr. Gladys. Yes, Dr. Gladys, I want
Yes.
to hear from you. Yes, you're welcome, Dr. Gladys.
I'm here. I think I'm still backstage. I'm still backstage.
Yes, you're
Okay.
welcome, Doctor.
Yes.
From,
Hello, how are you?
hello, Doctor. Hello,
Um,
Doctor.
yeah. And say that my son has now sorted out my problem, I hope, but he's still
Okay.
here on standby.
Okay.
Um,
Mm,
can you
that's
hear me
great.
properly?
That's great. Doctor,
Yes.
we hear some echoes in the background. We hear some echoes in the background.
But you can hear me.
Okay, it's fine. Let's go. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
Let's we want to know about the
We want to know about the
conservation through public
conservation
health.
through public health.
Yes,
What is it all
conservation
about?
through
What is
public.
it all about?
Thank you. It's an NGO that began 20 years ago. We're so happy to be celebrating 20 years this year, and we've had a series of events in December, late November, early December. We founded this organization based on experiences I had working as the first veterinary officer for Uganda Wildlife Authority. One of the first diseases we had to deal with was a skin disease in the gorillas, which was fatal. The baby gorilla died, and the others only recovered when we treated them with ivermectin. And it was traced to people living around the park who had very little health care. It was called scabies. Gorillas were always going to people's gardens to eat their banana plants, and they picked up scabies, and we were worried that they could pick up other diseases. So a few years later, we founded conservation through public health to improve the health of people and the gorillas together, as well as the community well-being. Did it together with my husband, Lawrence Zikusoka, and a vet technician called Stephen Rubanga. So CTPH kept going, and then we realized that there were a number of coffee farmers around the park who were not getting a fair market.
I think it's the network issue.
There was steady price. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Doctor. We can hear you, Doctor.
And so we decided that why don't we create a global coffee brand to save gorillas one sip at a time. And so we started it. It's called Gorilla Conservation Coffee. And so this coffee is basically we give farmers a good price for good coffee, because not everyone can benefit from the tourism market. Not everybody can be a ranger or a porter who carries tourist luggage to gorillas or sell crafts or accommodation of food. But through the Gorilla Conservation Coffee, people can buy their coffee, and it's sold at the lodges. It's sold all over Uganda at the Entebbe Duty Free Shop. And now we've even reached markets outside Uganda in the UK, US, New Zealand, South Africa, America, Canada, and other countries, and Australia. So what we do is we give them a good price for good coffee, so they don't have to enter the park to poach and collect firewood. Because before that, if somebody wants meat, it's easier for them to enter the park, hunt a duiker or a bush pig, than go and try and sell their coffee to because it's already priced. Just very good coffee. So we give them above market price for good coffee, and a donation goes to support the work of conservation through public health to improve the health of the people, the animals, and to make sure that everybody has better conservation attitudes. So
Yes, Dr.
the way we're
Gladys.
providing sustainable financing for
Yes, Dr.
conservation
Gladys.
beyond tourism.
Thank you for the sharing. I have a question on that.
Thank you for the
It
sharing.
seems,
I have a question on that.
Yes.
It seems
seems like the gorilla conservation coffee
the gorilla
seems to
conservation
be,
coffee
seems to be a successful social enterprise.
seems to be a successful social enterprise.
But how is it supporting the
But
gorillas conservation in Uganda?
how is it supporting the gorillas conservation in Uganda?
It's supporting the gorillas because every time we pay a farmer for coffee that they produce bordering the park, then we reduce their need to enter the park to poach and collect firewood. And this means that it's protecting the gorillas, the other wildlife in the national park, and the forest which they live in. And a donation from every bag which is sold is supporting the health of the communities so they don't make the gorillas sick, and the health of the gorillas and the education attitudes of the communities. So it's helping them to realize that they don't have to plant they don't have to collect trees from the forest, they can plant them. And in fact, even as they plant the coffee, we encourage them to plant shade trees. So all of this also helps to protect the climate around Bwindi.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you so
Gladys.
much.
It's
Doctor
another form of
Gladys.
sustainable financing for conservation beyond tourism. Because most people think sustainable financing for conservation is mainly through tourism, which it is. But then the global pandemic showed us that you can't only depend on tourists to survive. Because sometimes they won't turn up and you still have to protect the wildlife.
It's very interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin. Hello, Dr. Martin. Yes, I like your
Dr.
sharing.
Martin.
So about
Yes, I like your sharing.
yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Yes, go ahead. I can
Yes,
hear you.
Dr. Martin.
Yes,
Um,
Dr. Martin.
as you're explaining about
As you're
the
explaining
green
about
bond,
the green bond,
we looked at it
we
at
looked
the
at
macro
we looked
level.
at it at a macro level.
I'm wondering
I'm
what can
wondering
individuals,
what can individuals,
the private sector,
the private sector,
how can they engage into
who can
this
they engage into this
sustainable finance through the
sustainable
green bonds?
finance through the
Is there
green
any way they
bonds?
can be of
Is there any way they can be
use?
of use? Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Edgar.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Edgar.
Uh, one of the principal ways through which
One of the
individuals,
ways through which individuals,
I'm getting an echo. I don't know from who.
I'm getting an echo, I don't know from who.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So one of the ways in which individuals generally participate in these uh, debt markets or capital markets in general is through subscribing to some of these listed instruments. So if there is an issue of a green bond, or if there was an issue of a green bond in Uganda, individuals who have excess cash would then apply to purchase these green bonds from whoever is issuing the green bonds. And that's the direct way in which different individuals, corporations, and institutions such as NSSF would participate in this kind of initiative, including, by the way, a number of our insurance companies like UAP, like Prudential, like Jubilee Insurance, because they have a lot of money that they pick from the market, which they can then invest in these different instruments. And that also brings in our different commercial banks that also have some excess cash that they may want to invest in these different initiatives. So to directly answer your question, the one way in which they can participate is by directly purchasing these green bonds whenever they are in issue. I can't hear you, Edgar. I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much for the sharing, Doctor. Meaning the tycoons you have in town, they can go in to the trade and buy these bonds so that we
Absolutely.
can get finances for the environmental conservations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
For as long
For as
as
long as
these
these
agreements are issued,
are issued
and
and
the
the
participants who want to
participants who
purchase
want to
green
purchase
bonds
green bonds
are
are
convinced that
convinced that
their money
their
is safe.
money is safe.
That's the key thing
That's
for
the key thing for
every investor.
every
They
investor.
look at
They look at
uh, the safety of
the
their money.
safety of their money.
I'm still getting an echo. I don't
I'm
know
still
from you.
getting an echo. I don't know.
But what I was submitting was that every investor who wants to put their money in the market will look at the risk that their money is safe. And so, if, for example, my tree initiative decided to issue a green bond, the question that every investor would have on their fingertips would be, how safe is our money in my tree initiative, right? Because they would then have to look at the history of this organization. They would have to look at the competence of the management of this organization. They would have to look at the other assets that this organization possesses, which potentially will safeguard their investment. And they would also have to look at the other security that is available, whether we have backing from the government of Uganda, or we have backing from maybe African Development Bank, or we have backing from the World Bank. That would then inform the decision of these different investors to commit their funds into this project.
That is really interesting, Doctor. Thank you so much. Mm. Back to Dr. Gladys. Dr. Gladys, I liked your sharing. We loved it. But then a question comes in. Has government of Uganda come in to help you into the gorilla conservation? Are there any incentives or any practices?
Yes, I would say that the government of Uganda has come in to help. They've given us a lot of political will. We are working closely with the Wildlife Authority and the Uganda Coffee Development Authority. They generally are so happy that we're able to market gorilla conservation coffee all over the world. And often Ugandan coffee could be bundled up with coffee in Kenya, and they say it's Kenyan coffee. But now everybody knows gorillas are only in Bwindi, which is in Uganda. So for sure, this coffee has to be coming from Uganda. So they're very happy about that. They've also sent us people for training. In fact, currently, right now, our team is in Bwindi training women coffee farmers with support from Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and Planet Women. And they're basically training them in climate smart agriculture. And that is really helping. Actually, 120 out of 150 of our farmers, almost 1/3 are women, which is fantastic. We have about 500 farmers who are actively engaging. And so that is really helping. For sure, the government is really helping. And also we work closely with the Ministry of Health to improve the health of the local communities. We strengthen community-based healthcare through VHTs, village health teams, and we train them to do conservation work. So the government of Uganda is really helping, I have to say.
There's something that I never want to talk about, but from the audience, the question goes. We have heard of issues. Gorillas in Uganda migrate to neighboring countries. What is yours about that? Yet you want to conserve gorillas.
I would say that yes, gorillas in Uganda migrate to neighboring countries. Only it's not migration. For gorillas, they're not migrating. They're just, for them, it's their home range. Part of their home range may be in Uganda. The other part of it is in Rwanda or DRC. So they're not necessarily migrating. For them, they're just moving on with their lives. They don't know that this is Uganda, this is Rwanda, this is DRC. For them, they're getting on with their lives. But I have to say, they all come back. And for example, in Mugahinga, where it's in the Virunga volcano, so they move around a lot. When they're in Uganda, tourists visit them. When they're in Rwanda, tourists visit them. When they're in DRC, tourists visit them, because they're habituated. It's a habituated gorilla group. And so I wouldn't say that they're migrating, they're just getting on with their own lives. It just so happens that they're in, we've not lost them to other countries. We're just sharing them with other countries, which is okay.
That's so interesting.
That's so interesting
Because I know
because I know most of
Ugandans
Ugandans
were
were
not
not
aware of
aware
that.
of that.
Then, doctor,
Then,
back to
doctor,
the
back to the
issue,
issue,
the, top,
the,
the topic of the
the
day,
topic of the day,
the green bond,
the green bond,
the
the
finances.
finances.
How are you seeing
How are you
the
seeing the
corporations,
corporations,
the government,
the
private
government, private
individuals,
individuals
collaboration to
collaboration to
conserve the
conserve the
wildlife?
wildlife?
Not only about
Not only
gorillas,
about gorillas,
but the wildlife
but the
in
wildlife
general.
in general.
I would say that it's very important for them to collaborate. I haven't yet seen how they're collaborating. And I think I would say that Dr. Martin will give us more information on that. But it's definitely a very big opportunity for the government to collaborate with the private sector and the local communities or private individuals in the green bonds. I mean, a lot of people have their own land. They don't know what to do with it. They could remove all the trees and plant crops such as sugarcane or something. But if they keep their property with trees, especially trees which absorb carbon, maybe somebody, a private investor or somebody within the carbon market may say, this could be something that we can use. The things like Red Plus and things like that. But I would say that when it comes to tourism has been a very good way that the government, the private sector, which is the tour operators, and the local communities have been able to partner to conserve wildlife. Not only where the gorillas are, but all over the country. And also, back to the gorillas, Gorilla Conservation Coffee again, we work closely with the shops, the retailers, all over the country and all over the world are the ones who market the coffee. And those are corporate companies. Even the lodges themselves, the tour operators, become places where you can buy the coffee from. The cafes, we even have a Gorilla Conservation Cafe in Entebbe. But then also the individuals, the farmers themselves, they're also part of the solution, and they're also investors in conservation, if you could call it that. Even the smallholder farmers are investors in conservation. So the government, once the government is ready to work with private sector, private individuals, NGOs, I think we'll be able to achieve so much more. I actually mentioned a lot of it in my book, Working with Gorillas, which came out this year, because I have a whole section on sustaining conservation through tourism or through non-tourism related methods. And one of them is Gorilla Conservation Coffee. But even just the people you engage, those partnerships themselves can lead to sustainable financing for conservation, such as the green bonds, which Dr. Martin's been talking about. So it's really important to work together. We can't all work in our own silos without working together. We won't achieve very much.
That's very interesting.
That's very interesting.
FIMA Tech,
Prima Tech, thank
being
you for being
part of us.
part of us.
Yes, Dr. Martin.
Yes, Dr. Martin.
What opportunities
What
are you
opportunities are you
seeing
seeing
in financial
in financial
sustainability?
sustainability?
Like the
Like the
opportunities
opportunities
in promoting
in promoting
financial
financial
sustainability.
sustainability.
Where do you see us
Where do you see
going?
us going?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Edgar.
Edgar.
Um,
Um,
I'm not sure
I'm
if
not
I
sure
had
if I
you
had
well.
you well.
I think
I
there's a
think
bit
there's
of
a bit of
an echo
an
still.
echo still.
So I'm not
So I'm not
able to make
able
up
to
the
make up
question.
the question.
Edgar,
Can you ask?
You're on mute.
Hello, doctor.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me now? My
Loud
question
and clear.
was, yes, what opportunities are you seeing in promoting financial sustainability?
All right.
Yes. But, mm,
Financial sustainability, the beauty with it right now is that almost every corporate organization is looking at sustainability as a strategy. It is fascinating to note that most of these big corporate organizations, banks, telcos, have created sustainability departments. In some organizations, they call them ESG departments. That is environmental, social, and governance departments. In other organizations, they simply call them sustainability. So you find there is manager sustainability, and their responsibility is largely to coordinate the sustainability efforts and also to channel the different funds available into different sustainability projects. And therefore, because of that, and there are also standards that have been developed around ESG reporting or sustainability reporting, meaning that every company or corporation is expected to provide in its annual report a status of their participation in sustainability projects or ESG projects. And that is a very, very big positive, because that means that in their planning, each of these organizations actually commit a certain portion of their funds to promoting sustainability. And I am keen to learn from Dr. Gladys here how she has engaged some of these corporate organizations in the conservation of the gorillas, and also, in a wider context, the conservation of the environment. I believe that many of these corporate organizations would be interested in partnering with her organization to actually promote more of sustainability. And some of these organizations have also created events or activities that they engage in annually, which either help in raising funds, which they can then channel in different sustainability projects. Companies like Stanbic have committed, for example, to planting 50 million trees. And a number of other banks have also committed to planting 5 million, 15 million trees. Organizations like NSF have also committed to planting trees and greening the environment. And so these are very, very positive steps in terms of conserving Mother Nature, but also in taking reasonable steps to ensure that where organizations, such as Total, which are engaged in projects that have a direct impact on the environment, would then have a sustainability plan. In other words, how do they, after they've done their different projects that they've executed in different areas, how do they ensure that the environment is either restored or is improved to avert the negative consequences of the different activities they have been engaging in. And so there is that awareness now, and there is also that willingness by these organizations to spend a little more without necessarily looking at it as a profit activity, because every business looks at the bottom line, but how is conserving the environment impacting the bottom line? Obviously, it's an expenditure, but in the long run, it is a viable expenditure, because when the environment is conserved, that means that these businesses, these organizations have sustainable customers from where they will be able to sell their products, or to whom they will be able to sell these products. And so it is in their best interest that the environment is conserved, and therefore by spending a little more money, it actually fits well into their long-term strategic plans. Edgar, back to you.
thank you so much, Dr. Martin. That's really a great experience from you. Yes, as we conclude, I have one more question to Dr. Gladys. Dr. Gladys, this green This green talk show is of a My Tree initiative. We have planted 1 million trees for the last 5 years, and we are still planting. You, as a gorilla conservationist, how are you seeing our project moving on? Do you realize that we are doing a great job? Dr. Gladys? Dr. Martin?
Allow me to jump in, Edgar. There are
Okay.
actually a few questions from the audience. I don't know that you've taken note of them. There's a question from Ismail Tamale here, which is around how this tree initiative helps to create a sense of responsibility between the people and the trees. And I thought I should say one or two things about it.
Okay, doctor. Please share.
Yes. So one thing that I need to really emphasize is that this tree planting initiative is a very, very fantastic idea. Why? Because as a country, you know very well that we are blessed by nature. That's why we are called the Pearl of Africa. And the reason why that is the case is because we've had these natural forests. For example, the Mabira forest, very, very fantastic, forest cover. But over the years, these forests have been cut down for various reasons: charcoal, timber, all this, right? And so increasingly, we are getting all these negative effects or consequences of climate change as a result of man-made activities, right? And so it is incumbent on us to replant these trees. It is incumbent on us to create these forests again. It is incumbent on us, for example, to green our city. It is a bit disheartening if you're moving around Kampala and you have no shade when it is, shining. It's 2 p.m. and you have nowhere to take shelter to survive the scorching sun. Yet, those of us who have moved around the world, they are very, very beautiful cities. Just across in Kigali, every street has trees, and it just doesn't make the city more beautiful. It makes it also more aesthetic, and therefore we are looking at how do we make a contribution to greening Kampala, for example. How do we make a contribution to greening all these mushrooming cities that we are having in this country, Fort Portal, Mbale, and Arua, and all these cities? And so if the My Tree initiative can make a contribution in that respect, that will be a fantastic contribution in this regard. But also, a number of mushrooming schools. There are different churches. They have a lot of space. So by planting more trees, we are not only conserving nature, but we are contributing to ensuring that we continue getting the rainfall in the seasons that we're expecting it. And so that also supports our agricultural practices. It supports our backbone activities that we've always done as a country. And I think it's a very, very beautiful idea that this project is taking shape. You're on mute, Edgar.
Hello, Dr. Gladys.
Yes, hello.
Yes, we are
Yes,
glad
we
that you're
are
back.
glad that you're back.
Our question was
Our question was
this green
this
talk show
green talk show
is of a tree initiative
is
organization,
of a tree initiative organization,
and our target is planting trees
and our target is planting trees
around the world,
around the world,
not only in Uganda.
not only in
As
Uganda.
a gorilla
As a
conservationist, how do you see our project
conservationist,
moving
how
on?
do you see our
Well,
project
with
moving on?
your
Well,
line
with
of
your
business.
line of business.
It's a fantastic project, and well, I congratulate you on it. I see it going on very well. The communities who we reach, we're currently reaching over 7,000 homes, households around Bwindi in parishes that are bordering the park where gorillas often come out. And one of the things that we're getting them to do is to plant trees in their gardens so that they don't have to enter the forest for firewood, for fuelwood. And this really is very important. And as Dr. Martin said, it's even more comfortable to be in a place where you have trees. The sun is not beating down on you the whole time, on top of being a very important mitigation strategy and making sure that we always have rain. So that's one way you can do it. And even with the coffee farmers themselves who we work with, we get them to plant shade trees, because actually coffee which is planted under a shade tree is much more likely to have a better quality and a bigger yield. And so it all ends up being a win-win situation. And we'd love to partner with you in the areas where gorillas are found and other parts where we're working to make sure that over 1 million trees get planted. You know, the target keeps going up. That would be really great. You're muted.
As we conclude our green
talk show,
I want to express gratitude to
I
our
want to express gratitude to our incredible
Dr. Martin,
Dr. Martin and Dr.
Gladys for sharing their
for
expertise,
sharing their expertise and insight.
Their passion
for wildlife conservation is extremely good.
But the conservation doesn't end here. It is a call for action. We take inspiration from tonight's discussion, and we are eager to find ways, whether big or small, to contribute the well-being of our planet. Power to make a difference lies in the Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much, Dr. Gladys. And we are eager to hear from you next time. I take this opportunity to thank the audience and my team in the studio for the great work. And more is coming. The next episode after Christmas. And Merry Christmas. To all of you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to Edgar and the team and the audience that have been actively following. Christmas to Edgar and the team and the audience